Welcome to Fractured Chaos.
You ever make a decision so catastrophically stupid that it demolishes everything you've spent years building? That's the story I'm about to tell you. Fair warning, I'm not the hero here. Not even close. I'm Eric Donovan, 42 years old. 3 months ago, I had what most people would call the perfect life. Beautiful home in the suburbs, thriving marketing agency that I built from nothing, and Sarah, my wife of 15 years. Smart, loyal Sarah, who stood by me when I was a nobody with big dreams and student loan debt. The house was a colonial revival we'd renovated room by room over a decade. Sarah's meticulous planning and my weekend warrior attempts at craftsmanship. The business, Donovan Digital Solutions, had grown from me working nights at our kitchen table to a downtown office with 28 employees and clients across 3 states. And Sarah was the anchor that kept it all steady. We met in grad school. I was the loud one with grand plans. She was the quiet one with actual talent. Our first date was at a campus coffee shop, where I talked for 2 hours straight about my dreams of starting an agency. Most women would have excused themselves to the bathroom and never returned, but Sarah listened. Actually listened. When I finally ran out of steam, she smiled and said, "You'll need someone to manage the books while you're charming all those clients." It wasn't love at first sight, it was better. It was recognition. On our wedding day, Sarah's father, a taciturn man who rarely spoke unless it was important, pulled me aside and said, "She sees something in you worth believing in. Don't make her wrong." For 15 years, I made sure his faith was justified, until I didn't. It started innocently enough. A Facebook notification. People you may know, Rhonda Richards. The algorithm doing what it's designed to do, connecting people with shared history. Just another digital nudge you normally ignore. But Rhonda wasn't just anyone. She was the Rhonda Richards. Head cheerleader. Prom queen. The girl whose yearbook photo I'd stared at so many nights as a teenager that the page became worn at the edges. In high school, we inhabited different universes. I was the marketing club president and debate team alternate, invisible to her kind except when they needed posters for their parties. I still remember the one time she'd spoken directly to me, junior year, when she borrowed a pencil during AP English. "Thanks, Eric," she'd said, actually using my name. I didn't wash my right hand for 2 days afterward. Pathetic, I know. Now here she was, her profile picture showing she'd barely aged, same cascade of auburn hair, same confident smile. But what caught my attention was that she'd commented on my business post about our agency winning a regional innovation award. "Always knew you'd make it big, Eric. So proud to say I knew you when." She hadn't known me. That was the thing. We'd never exchanged more than 50 words in 4 years of high school, but something in me, something embarrassingly adolescent, stirred at the recognition I'd craved decades ago. I showed Sarah the comment that night over dinner, laughing it off as funny. "Remember that girl I had a crush on in high school? She just commented on my business post pretending we were friends." Sarah set down her wine glass. "The one whose photo was in your wallet when we met? Rhonda something? You knew about that?" I asked, genuinely surprised. "Eric, you made me help you find that wallet when you lost it at that concert our second date. The photo fell out. You were mortified, remember?" I didn't remember, but Sarah did. Sarah remembered everything. "Should I respond?" I asked, keeping my tone light. Sarah shrugged. "It's your business page. Networking is networking." There it was, permission I hadn't realized I was seeking. I replied to Rhonda's comment with professional gratitude. She immediately sent a private message. "Would love to catch up sometime. Life has taken some interesting turns." That innocent coffee catch-up turned into lunch. Lunch turned into drinks. Drinks turned into, well, you can fill in the blanks. The whole time, she kept saying things like, "I always wondered what happened to you. And I used to watch you in AP English, you know." Everything I wanted to hear at 17 was suddenly being whispered to me at 42. Our first coffee was at a place near my office. I arrived 15 minutes early, nervously checking my appearance in the reflective glass of the storefront. When she walked in, dressed for impact in a form-fitting emerald dress that stood out among the business casual crowd, conversations momentarily stopped. She had that effect. "Eric Donovan," she said, embracing me like we were old friends. "Look at you, all successful and distinguished." "Hardly distinguished," I laughed, suddenly conscious of my graying temples and the slight softening around my jawline that no amount of intermittent fasting had been able to address. "Are you kidding? You were always the smart one. I saw that article about your company. Innovative disruption in the digital marketing space. Very impressive." The conversation flowed easily. Too easily. She asked questions about my work, laughed at my jokes, touched my arm occasionally for emphasis, and she shared her own story. 3 marriages. I'm a hopeless romantic. A career in pharmaceutical sales, not as exciting as what you do, and recently separated from husband number 3. He just didn't understand ambition. I returned to the office afterward feeling strangely energized. I told myself it was professional networking, maybe even material for a potential client case study on pharmaceutical marketing strategies. Deep down, I knew better. The lunches began a week later, always at places just far enough from my office that I wouldn't run into colleagues or clients. Always with a glass of wine or two. Always with Rhonda dressed like she was attending a different, more glamorous meeting before and after hours. "I have a confession," she said during our 3rd lunch, leaning forward conspiratorially. "I had the biggest crush on you in high school." I nearly choked on my water. That can't be true. Why not? You were smart, funny in that dry way, and always seemed so focused. Like you knew exactly where you were going while the rest of us were just trying to make it to the next party. "But you dated the quarterback and then that guy who had the Mustang." She rolled her eyes. "Boys, not men. There's a difference." She reached across the table and placed her hand on mine. "I was too intimidated to talk to you back then. Isn't that ridiculous?" It was ridiculous. It was also intoxicating. The drinks phase began a month later. Sarah had noticed my late nights by then. "Another client dinner?" she asked one evening as I changed my shirt for the 3rd time. "Marketing association meeting," I lied. "Networking thing. Probably boring, but good for business." She nodded slowly, her eyes lingering on my choice of cologne, the expensive one she'd given me for our anniversary that I usually saved for special occasions. "That must be some networking event," she murmured, turning back to her book. It wasn't networking. It was Rhonda in a hotel bar, drinking martinis and telling me how her husband never appreciated her intelligence, how he dismissed her business ideas, how different it would have been if she'd ended up with someone like me. "To paths not taken," she toasted, clinking her glass against mine. 4 martinis later, we took a different path directly to the elevator and up to a room she'd already booked. I'd like to say I hesitated at the threshold, that I thought of Sarah and our 15 years together, that I considered, even for a moment, what I was about to destroy. But I didn't. I crossed that line without a backward glance. That night marked the beginning of the end, though I was too blinded to see it. The affair, because that's what it was, despite my mental gymnastics to frame it as a reconnection or exploring neglected feelings, consumed me. Rhonda consumed me. My work suffered first. I missed deadlines, skipped client calls, delegated important presentations to subordinates so I could meet Rhonda for our lunches that now routinely lasted until mid-afternoon. My creative director, Jason, young, ambitious, and increasingly essential as I checked out, covered for me more than once. "Everything okay, boss?" he asked after I missed a crucial pitch meeting. "You seem distracted lately." "Never better," I assured him. "Just exploring some new directions." New directions indeed. I rented a downtown apartment, ostensibly as a work crash pad for late nights. Sarah accepted this explanation with a quietness that should have alarmed me. She'd always been perceptive. It was what made her an excellent business partner in the early days of our agency. She saw patterns, anticipated problems, read people in ways I never could. 6 weeks into the affair, I was already composing the speech in my head. The "it's not you, it's me" speech. The "we've grown apart" speech. The speech that men approaching middle age have been giving their loyal wives since time immemorial when something newer and more exciting comes along. But before I could deliver it, Sarah caught me in a lie. A simple one. I'd claimed to be at a conference in Chicago, but the event organizer called the house looking for me, confused about my absence from a panel I was supposed to lead. That night, when I returned home with my carefully rehearsed explanation about a last-minute change of plans, Sarah was waiting in the kitchen. No accusations, no tears, just a simple question. "Are you having an affair?" I considered lying again, but 15 years of partnership demanded at least that much honesty. It's complicated, I began. It's a yes or no question, Eric. Yes, she nodded, like I'd just confirmed the weather forecast rather than detonated our marriage. It's her from the reunion last year, isn't it? The one who kept texting you after. I had no idea Sarah knew about those texts. I'd deleted them immediately. But somehow she knew. And here's the kicker. She didn't fight for me. Not one tear. She just said, "You should know what you're walking into, Eric," and handed me a folder before walking upstairs to pack my things. "What's this?" I called after her. "Information," she said without turning around. "Do with it what you will." The folder sat on our kitchen counter, the handcrafted butcher block we'd found at an estate sale in Vermont during what I now realized was a much happier time. I didn't take it with me that night. Didn't want whatever it contained to complicate my new narrative about finding lost love and second chances. I didn't open that folder for 2 weeks. I was too busy playing house with Rhonda in my downtown apartment, feeling like I'd recaptured my youth. Rhonda was spontaneous, exciting, everything Sarah wasn't. She'd show up at my office unannounced for afternoon meetings. She'd suggest weekend getaways an hour before departure. She made me feel alive. "We should redecorate this place," she announced one evening, surveying my apartment with a critical eye. "It's so bachelor basic. You're too sophisticated for this IKEA showroom look." The next day, a designer friend of hers appeared, measuring spaces and showing fabric swatches. I didn't ask about costs. Didn't think to question why Rhonda, who claimed her divorce had left her temporarily cash-strapped, had such expensive tastes. Or who was paying the designer's consultation fee. My agency began landing new clients, unusual ones with big budgets and vague deliverables. "Connections from my pharma days," Rhonda explained when I expressed surprise at how easily these accounts came our way. "I might have talked you up in certain circles." I introduced her to my team as a strategic consultant. Most nodded politely, but I caught the exchanged glances. Only Jason seemed genuinely enthusiastic about her involvement. "She's got amazing insights into the healthcare vertical," he told me after a meeting where Rhonda had dominated the conversation despite having no formal role. "We should bring her on officially." At home, or what now passed for home, Rhonda was increasingly integrated into my life. Her clothes filled my closet. Her preferred foods stocked my refrigerator. Her scent lingered on my sheets even when she was away on mysterious business trips that she discussed only in vague terms. And then the first bill arrived. My credit card, maxed out on purchases I didn't recognize. When I confronted Rhonda, she laughed it off. "I was going to surprise you with my new look for the charity gala. Don't you want me to look good on your arm?" $12,000 of looking good, apparently. "That's a lot," I managed to say. "Eric," she purred, wrapping her arms around my neck. "Image is everything in your world. The clients expect a certain presentation. I'm just making sure you're represented properly." When I still looked uncertain, her tone changed slightly. "Unless you're saying I'm not worth the investment?" Before I could answer, she'd moved on to planning our next couple's weekend with one of my new clients, an outing on their yacht that apparently required still more new outfits. It wasn't until my accountant called with concerns about unusual spending patterns that the fog began to lift. Multiple cash withdrawals from business accounts, wire transfers to unfamiliar entities, credit applications submitted under the company name. "I'm sure there's an explanation," I told him, "but put a temporary freeze on any new authorizations until I review things." That night, I finally opened Sarah's folder. Inside were screenshots, dozens of them, conversations between Rhonda and her friends, about me, about my company, about my net worth. "He's loaded and desperate for validation," one message read. "Play the 'I always had a crush on you' card and he'll roll over like a puppy." The messages dated back months before our chance reconnection, detailed discussions of my business holdings, analyses of my company's client list, observations about my marriage based on social media photos. "Wife looks boring. Probably easy to outshine her and create distance. But it gets better." Tucked behind those screenshots was a notification from my business bank account. $50,000 had been transferred out 3 days before I left Sarah. The authorization appeared to come from my email account, an account I later discovered had been accessed from Rhonda's home IP address weeks before our chance reconnection. I wasn't randomly suggested as a friend to Rhonda on Facebook. She had targeted me after seeing the feature on my company in Entrepreneur magazine. The high school connection just made it convenient. The perfect cover story for the perfect con. Another printout showed a newly formed LLC, Richards Consulting Group, that had received several transfers from my company accounts, ostensibly for strategic services. Services never rendered, contracts I'd never signed, but bearing what appeared to be my signature. The final page was a simple note in Sarah's neat handwriting. "I'm not showing you this to win you back. That ship has sailed. I'm showing you this because despite everything, I don't think you deserve what's coming. Be careful, Eric. S." My hands were shaking by the time I finished reviewing everything. The systematic nature of it, the careful planning, the way Rhonda had studied me, my weaknesses, my history, my pressure points, like a general preparing for battle. But most devastating was the realization that I had been nothing special to her. Just another mark, another conquest in what appeared to be a well-practiced scheme. You'd think that would be enough to send me crawling back to Sarah, right? But pride is a powerful thing. Instead, I confronted Rhonda. She cried, claimed her ex-husband had hacked her accounts to frame her, that she was being set up, and like the fool I was, I believed her. Why? Because admitting I'd been played meant admitting I'd thrown away my marriage for nothing. "Baby, do you really think I could do something like that to you?" she sobbed, her makeup artfully smudged. "After everything we've shared, after all the plans we've made?" She produced counter-evidence, emails that appeared to be from her ex-husband threatening to ruin her new relationship. Screenshots of her own showing what looked like hacking attempts on her accounts. "He's always been jealous," she explained. "He can't stand that I found happiness with someone successful and kind." I wanted to believe her, needed to believe her. The alternative was too humiliating to contemplate. So I doubled down, moved Rhonda into my apartment permanently, proposed to her on a yacht I couldn't afford, introduced her to my clients as my partner in life and soon in business. I even took out a second mortgage on my half of the house Sarah and I still technically co-owned. Meanwhile, Sarah filed for divorce without contest, asked for nothing beyond what was legally hers, even wished me well in a text that still makes me sick to read. "I hope she makes you happier than I could." My old friends watched this transformation with increasing alarm. My college roommate Dave tried an intervention after meeting Rhonda at a dinner party where she'd spent the evening name-dropping and suggesting my company should pivot to where the real money is. "What happened to you, man?" Dave asked when we stepped outside for air. "This isn't you." "You don't know her like I do," I defended. "She sees my potential in ways Sarah never did." "Sarah helped you build a successful company from scratch," he reminded me. "She believed in you when you were nobody." I cut him off, cut all of them off, the friends who'd known me before success, before Rhonda. They just didn't understand the connection we had, I told myself. The passion, the excitement of finally being with someone who matched my ambition. 3 months of living with Rhonda and my business was failing. Clients were jumping ship. My old friends stopped calling. My parents refused to meet her. But I kept telling myself it was worth it, that this was the grand passion I'd always wanted. The company's financial situation became dire. Projects were behind schedule. Employees weren't getting paid on time. Jason, my creative director, increasingly ran interference with clients, explaining my absences as strategic planning periods. "We need to talk about cash flow," he told me one morning, looking uncharacteristically serious. "We're hemorrhaging money, and I can't figure out where it's going." "Just a rough patch," I assured him. "Those new healthcare clients Rhonda brought in will stabilize things." He looked at me strangely. "Eric, none of those clients have paid their invoices, not one, and they're making unreasonable demands that are stretching our resources thin." I brushed off his concerns. Rhonda had explained that the payment cycles in healthcare were different, longer approval processes, more paperwork. It would all work out. It had to. The next week I came home early from a client meeting that Rhonda had suspiciously encouraged me to take. "They're wavering," she'd said. "Only you can close this deal. Take them to that steakhouse they like. My treat." Her treat with my company card, naturally. The meeting had been a bust. The client never showed. When I called to reschedule, they seemed confused, saying they'd canceled days ago through my associate. No one had told me. I returned to the apartment, frustrated and ready to vent to Rhonda about the miscommunication. Instead, I heard laughter from the bedroom. Our bedroom. A man's voice, then Rhonda's distinctive giggle. For a moment, I stood frozen in the hallway, my brain refusing to process what was happening. Then I pushed open the door. There she was, in our bed, with my 26-year-old creative director. The same creative director who had access to all my company passwords. The same creative director who had mysteriously been able to afford a Rolex last month. "Eric!" Rhonda exclaimed, not bothering to cover herself. "You're home early!" Jason at least had the decency to look embarrassed, scrambling for his clothes. "Boss, I can explain. Did you really think I was in love with you?" She laughed when I caught them. "You weren't even on my radar in high school. I had to ask around to figure out who you were when I saw that magazine article." I stood there, unable to speak, as she casually reached for her robe, the silk one I'd bought her during our weekend in New York. "Oh, don't look so shocked. You were a means to an end, Eric. A stepping stone." "A stepping stone to what?" I finally managed. "To what I deserve," she said, her voice hardening. "Do you have any idea what it's like to be the pretty girl everyone assumes is stupid? To watch mediocre men like you build empires while women like me are expected to smile and look decorative?" I decided a long time ago to take what should have been mine to begin with. Jason slipped past me, mumbling apologies. I barely registered his exit. "How long?" I asked. "How long have you two been working together?" She finished for me. "Since before you and I reconnected. Jason reached out after seeing my profile connected to yours. Smart boy. He recognized opportunity when he saw it." That night, after they left, I found a second phone hidden in her designer handbag, the one I paid for. Texts to 5 different men. All successful, all with similar stories, all being played simultaneously. And a series of messages to my creative director, planning exactly how to drain what was left of my company accounts before liquidating my assets. The messages detailed which clients were fabricated, created solely to generate fake invoices and move money through the business, which contracts were forged, which employees were complicit. It was an elaborate scheme that reached far deeper into my company than I'd imagined possible. I also found something else, a notebook with Sarah's daily routine documented in disturbing detail. Coffee shop at 7:15 a.m., yoga studio at 6 p.m. Thursdays, notes about her new dating life, men's names with question marks, the words "potential problem" next to a photo taken through our old living room window, Sarah sitting alone, looking at what appeared to be our wedding album. I called Sarah immediately, warning her to change her locks, set her alarm. For the first time in months, I heard fear in her voice when she asked, "How did you know someone's been watching the house?" "Rhonda," I said, the name catching in my throat. "She's been documenting you, planning something." A long silence followed. Then, "I've noticed a car, same one, different parking spots. I thought I was being paranoid." Security camera footage Sarah sent me later showed Rhonda had been circling her neighborhood for weeks. The police found lockpicking tools in Rhonda's car, along with documents forged with Sarah's signature, ready to transfer ownership of our marital home entirely to me, which meant eventually to Rhonda. The plan became clear. Push Sarah out completely, take everything we'd built, then discard me when there was nothing left to drain. And I had handed her the keys to the kingdom. When I met with detectives the next day, they revealed the scope of Rhonda's operation was far larger than I'd imagined. Multiple identities, previous victims across 3 states, a network of accomplices like Jason who helped identify and groom potential targets. "You're not the first successful businessman she's done this to," the detective explained, "but you might be the one who finally helps us build a case that sticks." I'd like to say I immediately became a changed man, that I begged Sarah for forgiveness, that I pressed charges against Rhonda. But rock bottom has a basement, it turns out. Instead, I drank myself into oblivion for 2 weeks, lost my remaining clients, nearly lost my license after driving when I shouldn't have. It wasn't until I woke up in the hospital with Sarah, sitting beside my bed, that I finally broke down. "Why are you here?" I asked her. "Because nobody deserves what she did to you," Sarah replied. "Not even you." I turned away, unable to bear the compassion in her face. "I destroyed everything. Our marriage, the business we built, all for a lie." "You didn't destroy the business yet," she corrected. "There's still a shell worth saving if you're willing to do the work." That's when she showed me her own folder, evidence she'd been collecting on Rhonda for months. Even after I left, Sarah had been investigating, building a case. not to win me back, but because, as she put it, somebody needed to stop her before she did this to someone else. Together with the police, we discovered Rhonda had done this 7 times before. Different cities, different names sometimes, always the same method. Find successful men with an emotional vulnerability, exploit it, drain them dry, disappear. I wasn't special. I was just the latest target. Sarah testified against Rhonda at the hearing, sat next to my mother, helped me file for bankruptcy protection. Never once said, "I told you so," even though she had every right to. That was 6 months ago. Today, Rhonda is awaiting trial on multiple fraud charges. I'm sleeping on my brother's couch, rebuilding my business one small client at a time, and Sarah is engaged to her lawyer, a decent guy from what mutual friends tell me, someone who appreciates what he has. The irony of it all still chokes me sometimes. How I'd convinced myself I was reclaiming some lost opportunity, when in reality I was trading substance for shadow, authentic connection for calculated manipulation, a real partner for someone who saw me as nothing more than an ATM with an easily exploitable ego. My new office is a shared workspace in a renovated factory building. No corner suite, no expensive artwork. Just a desk, a laptop, and the handful of loyal clients who stuck with me despite everything. They're smaller accounts now. Local businesses, startups, companies without big marketing budgets. The kind of clients I started with 15 years ago. There's a certain symmetry to it. A return to fundamentals. I'm doing the work myself again. The strategy sessions, the content creation, the analytics, rather than delegating everything while I took 3-hour lunches with Rhonda. And surprisingly, I'm enjoying it, remembering why I got into this business in the first place. Sometimes I drive by our old house, her house now, and see them gardening together, doing the simple Sunday things Sarah and I used to do, before I convinced myself those quiet moments weren't enough. Before I threw away 15 years for a fantasy that never existed. He makes her laugh. I can see it from my car, her head thrown back in that full-body laugh that used to be reserved for me. He passes her tools, brings her lemonade, listens intently when she speaks. All the small gestures of partnership that I'd come to take for granted. My therapist, yes, I finally started seeing one, says it's unhealthy to monitor Sarah's new life, that I need to focus on my own recovery. She's right, of course, but sometimes witnessing Sarah's happiness feels like a necessary penance, a reminder of exactly what I sacrificed for a lie. Last week, I ran into Sarah at our old favorite coffee shop. I almost turned around and left, but she saw me and waved me over. We talked for 20 minutes. Surface conversation, nothing deep. She asked about the business. I asked about her wedding plans. Neither of us mentioned Rhonda or the case or the divorce. As I was leaving, she handed me a small package. "What's this?" I asked. "The watch I was going to give you for our anniversary," she said, "before everything happened. No point keeping it around." Inside was the vintage Omega I'd pointed out years ago in a shop window, the one I'd forgotten about, the one she'd apparently been saving for, and a note. "Time doesn't move backward, Eric, only forward." I stood there, the weight of the watch heavy in my palm, the weight of her forgiveness even heavier. "Why?" I asked. "After everything I did?" "It's not absolution, Eric," she interrupted gently. "Just closure, and maybe a reminder." "Of what?" "That someone once knew who you really were," she said. "Before you forgot yourself." She's right. There's no undoing what I did, no reclaiming what I threw away. The only thing left is to make sure the time I have left isn't wasted on more fantasies. So that's my story. No heroes, no winners. Just a cautionary tale from a man who had everything, chased a high school dream, and woke up with nothing. Well, not quite nothing. I have clarity now. Painful, expensive clarity. And a really nice watch I can't bear to wear. The preliminary hearing for Rhonda's case is next month. My testimony will help put her away for years, the prosecutor says. Jason turned state's evidence in exchange for reduced charges. The web of financial fraud they uncovered spans nearly a decade and involves dozens of victims besides me. I should feel vindicated. Instead, I mostly feel foolish. A middle-aged man so desperate to believe he was special that he ignored every warning sign, every red flag, every sensible voice telling him he was being manipulated. Dave, my college roommate, called last week. The first of my old friends to reach out since everything imploded. "Thought you might want to grab a beer," he said. "No lectures, no 'I told you so,' just beer. We sat at a dive bar we used to frequent in our 20s, before Success, before Sarah, before Rhonda, before all of it. He didn't ask about the case or the business or my current circumstances. Instead, he told stories about our college days, reminded me of the person I used to be. "You know what I always admired about you?" he said after his second beer. "Your optimism. You never saw obstacles, only possibilities." I laughed bitterly. "Look where that got me." "Optimism isn't the problem, man," he replied. "Delusion is. There's a difference between seeing the best possible outcome and ignoring reality." He's right. I'd confused fantasy with potential, mistaken manipulation for connection, sacrificed everything real for the hollow victory of finally being chosen by a woman who'd once made me feel invisible. Here's what I've learned. Sometimes the ghosts from our past should stay where they belong, in the past. Not because they're not worth chasing, but because the version of them we're chasing never actually existed. We're pursuing projections of our own unmet needs, our own unhealed wounds. I don't wear Sarah's watch. Can't bring myself to feel the weight of it on my wrist, the physical reminder of time I can't reclaim. But I keep it on my nightstand. The last thing I see before sleep, the first thing I see upon waking. A daily reminder that while time only moves forward, we still have choices about which direction we move in. Forward doesn't have to mean alone. It doesn't have to mean abandoning everything and everyone who helped shape us. Sometimes moving forward means circling back to your foundations and rebuilding from there. I'll never have Sarah back. Never again experience the comfortable certainty of a partnership tested by time and strengthened by shared struggle. That door is closed. But maybe, just maybe, I can become someone worthy of that kind of partnership again. Someone who recognizes the value of quiet Sunday mornings and inside jokes and the profound intimacy of being truly known. Someone who understands that real love isn't about recapturing youth or validating old insecurities. Real love, I've learned too late, is about growing together, about choosing each other day after day, about seeing clearly, flaws and all, and staying anyway. Sarah saw me clearly from the beginning. Rhonda only ever saw what she could take. The difference cost me everything, but acknowledging that difference might just be the first step toward building something new from the ashes of what I burned down. Time doesn't move backward, only forward. And so must I.